How was the flight?
The flight was great. I mean, we left early and we got here early, and we had a wonderful trip over.
No stacking over Heathrow, which used to be something of an experience.
No stacking over Heathrow, no queues out of JFK.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just great.
Let's talk a little bit about Heathrow.
Yeah.
This is a tough airport to get into, to get slots at. You've got a temporary slot allowance here at Heathrow. Other carriers obviously aren't using them. How easy is it going to be to make that permanent? Are you going to be able to make Heathrow your permanent home? Nice to see you arriving here, but are you going to be carrying on being able to do it?
Look, we're so happy to be at Heathrow. We don't have any plans to leave Heathrow. You're right, it's not going to be easy, but we think we have a path that's going to allow us to stay here. If you look at what's happened with the fares, Guy, before JetBlue started this route and what happened now, did you ever think you'd see our competitors offer round-trip fares in business class for under $2,000 between JFK and Heathrow? And it's not COVID, because these fares were higher even during the COVID period.
Yeah.
JetBlue comes on Heathrow, these fares plummet. We have to be able to stay at Heathrow.
So you think you can make them stick? You're already having an effect, but you think if you stay here, those fares will be permanently lower.
I'm going to tell you what we do is that we're going to keep the fares low. What we've seen every time JetBlue has come onto a market, there's a phrase in the US called the JetBlue effect. By the way, it's not our phrase, it's one that others use, that when JetBlue comes on the market, fares stay low permanently. We saw it on JFK LAX when we started our Mint business cabin back in 2014. Fares are still half now in business class than they were pre-2014. That's 7 years later.
I can't fly the other way. I could probably get an exemption to do so, but it's tough.
It's hard.
When is that going to change? You can now fly into the UK from the United States. What about some reciprocity?
No, so the opening up by the UK government was terrific. We saw, in fact, the day that it was announced, we saw our daily new bookings triple.
Wow.
Between JFK and Heathrow. So that was great. And as a US-based carrier, honestly, most of what we're going to sell is going to be in the US. So that was great for JetBlue. The US government should open up. There is no reason not to. You can fly from countries that have much higher COVID infection rates, but you can't come from countries in Europe where infection rates are much lower. That is not a risk-based approach. When it's going to open up, I couldn't tell you. It's something that we and the other airlines in the US continue a dialogue on with the administration.
By Christmas?
I mean, hopefully even sooner than that. But of course, I don't really know. It's really hard to predict how they're thinking about it.
Okay, you've flown here on a narrow-body aircraft.
Yes.
Normally, you fly across the Atlantic on a wide body. You're flying the A321neo LR. You're pushing that aircraft pretty hard. In the middle of summer, I know it doesn't feel like summer here in London today, but in the middle of summer, the aircraft is obviously well within its operating limits. In the winter with headwinds, is that aircraft going to be being pushed pretty hard? How are you feeling about it?
The aircraft will be fine. Obviously, we have a very actually mint-heavy cabin. We don't have that many total customers on board because of that. It's going to help keep the airplane light. So we don't have any concern about range. I mean, when we set this out, we needed to make sure that in the winter, when you're facing those headwinds, as you say, we weren't going to be diverting airplanes for fuel. So that's not something we see happening.
XLR, though, would that be a better aircraft?
XLR, yeah. XLR will give us a bit more range, and we'll use that to push into some other cities in Central and Southern Europe that we can't get with the LR.
So what's next after London?
Well, London's going to keep us busy for a while. It's a huge premium market, as you know. I think our impact of lowering fares is going to stimulate a lot of demand. When London is done, we'll look at other markets. Paris, obviously, is something that's of great interest to us, and as are some of the regional UK markets in the summer.
You're incredibly well known in the United States. You're not well known over here. Mm-hmm. You're going to be putting a lot of flights on now. You're going to sort of downgrade that as we go into September. When do we see a big marketing push? When do you really push these routes really hard? When do we see a lot of spend to try to raise awareness? A lot of people. I've already had the conversation with people over here. Oh, JetBlue, that's like EasyJet, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's not.
No, it's not, and that's going to take time. But I mean, honestly, let's get the restrictions lifted by the US government. We think that's going to drive a lot of demand, and to me, that feels the right time for us to start expanding our marketing efforts here in the UK.
Let's talk a little bit about what is happening stateside. Delta is obviously making its presence felt in a very significant way. Are you anticipating that is going to have a near-term impact in terms of bookings? I'm just trying to get a kind of gauge on what you're seeing on the ground on a daily basis.
Yeah, so certainly over the last a couple of weeks, it's been as we've seen the Delta variant go up, it is something that we started to see an impact on. I did actually say in our earnings call at the end of July that I was cautious about September for that very reason. And so right now it's playing out pretty much as we expected. But what I've learned on this, as case counts continue to rise, you get more customers wanting refunds, more people holding off bookings. What I would say is I think this is going to be a fairly short-term peak. If you look at how the Delta variant has come through the UK and other countries, it's normally a 6 to 8 week peak. And there's no reason to assume that that's going to be different in the US.
Yeah, Southwest certainly making that point, as you say, maybe a little after you.
Yes.
Yesterday. In terms of what is happening, in terms of the way that you're operating the business at the moment, as Delta rises, are you going to rethink what you're doing in terms of staff policy surrounding vaccination? What is your current thinking around that? In terms of masking, how are you changing the way that you're operating the business as a result of it?
So, I mean, we've been in this COVID world for 18 months now. We, like other airlines, I think, have developed great procedures. Safety always front of mind. We have a federal mask mandate anyway in the US that runs through to the middle of September. My expectation is that could get extended if the case counts stay high. Don't know yet. That applies to airports, onboard airplanes, we've had really good take-up with vaccinations from our crew members. And right now, we're still in the mode of encouraging people to get vaccinated.
Are you rethinking that? A lot of airlines, I was talking to a number of kind of CEOs recently, both in the airline sector, the travel sector, and more broadly. They're all kind of reviewing what their policies are at the moment. Work from home, vaccination. Is this stuff in flux at the moment?
No, yeah, of course. I mean, that's something we've continued to keep under review. Do you bring people back to the office? Do you let them work from home? My view is, as for vaccinations, it's better if people want to get vaccinated. And so trying to continue to encourage them. Hopefully in the US, we'll get news soon that the vaccines have been approved. At the moment, they're emergency use authorization. I think a lot of people are going to get vaccinated once this vaccine has been approved. And, obviously, that's where we're focused right now. Yes, we're going to continue to think about, should we mandate, should we offer other forms of testing exemption? But right now, we're still very much focused on encouraging strongly people to get vaccinated.
Any sense at the moment that you are experiencing a staff shortage, skills shortage? Do you look at what is happening more broadly in the labour market and think, I'm going to have to start paying my people a little bit more?
The biggest challenge we've had is, JetBlue didn't furlough anybody during COVID. We've never furloughed anyone in our 21-year history, not through the financial crisis, not through 9/11. So we had most of our people there ready to come back. Some decided to voluntarily leave. We've been hiring like crazy. We're hiring 4,000 people this year. We're not seeing any challenges ourselves as hiring. Where we have seen some challenges is with some of our business partners, some of the companies, catering companies and other airport services companies, that they have had challenges, and we've definitely felt the impact of that.
John wants to know if you're going to roll over as Mosaic.
John, do a bit more flying, you'll make Mosaic.